At this point, we got the EGR valve on the bench. We're going to start disassembling it so we can actually clean it. Now, we want to take the electrical portion off because that way we can move the valve that's inside. It's basically one shaft. It's got two valves built onto it. So we want the fluid to get in there and we want to be able to work it back and forth. So the solenoid has to come off. The solenoid's held on with 4 Phillips screws. Let's go ahead and get them off. Now the way that valve is held in there is basically, if you're familiar with any valve train components, it's almost like a valve spring. There's a spring, some keepers, and a retainer. Now that's what we've got to get compressed to get the keepers off. Now it's not a high tension or high, it's not a, put it this way, it's not a spring that takes a lot of force to compress. So you'll be able to do that by hand. It's just you need to watch out when you're doing it so you don't lose your keepers in case there's any kind of spring back. Alright, last screw's off. Alright, there's a metal gasket there. You don't need to replace that, it's fine. Use it. Now here's the top of the EGR valve with the keepers like I was telling you about, and they're much like a regular valve spring on a cylinder head. So I'm going to go ahead, what I like to do, because as I'm pushing in, it's going to keep going down. I shove a rag in one of the holes so that there's some resistance and it doesn't just bottom out. So I just shove me a rag down in the hole nice and neatly, and then when I press down, we're going to be able to get the keepers out. Now like I said, be careful, your finger slips or anything, keepers can go flying across the shop. I got one of them off, sit to the side somewhere I won't lose it, and I compress it again and do a little wiggling and get it off. There we go. Sit that to the side. There's your spring, your keeper, and your retainers. So now that I got it off, you can actually move it. But I can feel resistance, and that's one of the main reasons why we're cleaning it. So I've got some fluid, kind of prop it up at a certain angle where it works good. We've got our basic EGR system cleaner. The part number is right here, 68028 729 AA. Straight through, you can get that straight through your Mopar parts department. And I just go ahead and fill up the area. Try to keep it as level as I can because of course it's going to want to come out one of the 3 openings. Now, whatever you can do to get it the highest. Now you can put some rubber plugs in here if you want on the back side. That's just what I use. I'll let it soak for a little while, and then what I do is I'll come back every so often and I'll work that valve so the fluid starts moving around. I mean right now actually it's starting to free up and move a lot more with less effort, probably because the cleaner fluid's in there helping lubricate it. But nonetheless, I'll probably let it sit here for at least 3-4 hours, and once that's done I'll go ahead and clean it out with water, spray it out, get it all out. And it's going to take a little bit of spraying because some of the chemical gets in different orifices in here, so keep spraying it till it's finally clean and then let it air dry. And then once it's air dry, we'll work on getting it back together. Alright, so we've already let it sit for a couple hours. We've washed it out. It's air dried. You can see it down in there real good now. It's nice and shiny. It's moving easily. I can look at the surface of that valve all the way around and there's nothing stuck to it, so we're good to go. I do the same procedure as I did taking it off. I shove a rag down in the bottom, kind of pack it in there. That way the valve don't have a tendency to want to keep dropping. And then what I like to do is I like to add a little bit of grease right around the edge of the valve, the stem that sticks up, because that's where the keeper is going to go. And I want the keepers to have something to stick to as I'm putting it together. That way they don't keep falling around. Now I just grab my spring, the retainer right there. And what I can do is I can do 2 things. I can use a pair of needle nose, press down on it, go down with it like this, and then try to put my keepers on. Or I can just try to put them on top and just kind of press down until I get them on. Either way, just take time, watch it that it doesn't pop back off and go somewhere where you can't find them because they're real small. I mean, that's just all they are right there. Both of them together, they're pretty small, so they're easily lost. So just take your time, like I said, use a pair of needle nose if you want. Go ahead and try it while we're filming. Just keep it down as far as you can get it. The problem is trying to get it down in there. There, I've got one on. What I do is I work on getting the other one on as well. And then we'll put the solenoid back on. Alright, so I've got the valve keepers back on. Make sure it works. Make sure they're fully seated, looks good. Now we can go back to putting the metal gasket on as well as the solenoid. And remember, the connector on the solenoid points to the same direction as that crossover tube inlet. I'll just put it on there. And now it's just a matter of installing my 4 Phillips screws. And once I get them on and tightened down, we'll move on to cleaning the gasket surfaces here, and along where the crossover tube goes. So there we go, we got our fully operational EGR valve back together now. It's cleaned, solenoid's back on. Like I said, we'll take care of the gasket surface. The installation is just opposite of removal, 410 millimeters going down to the top. Then you got your V-band clamp that goes around here, and the pipe from the crossover for the EGR cooler. Just taking it down, and your connector, and then put the plastic cover back on top of the engine. Alright, so here you go, your perform service message. That's what we want to get rid of next. That's the whole reason why we came in here. So as you can see, this customer's had it on for approximately 30,000 miles, so I think it's time to get rid of it. So I'm going to show you the procedure and what you need to do. Alright, so here we go. We've got our steps. First thing you need to do, you need to turn that ignition key on, but you don't want to crank the vehicle. Now you need to depress the brake pedal 2 full times and release, and then you need to proceed to depressing the accelerator pedal 2 full times and release. Now you need to do both of these things within 10 seconds. Then once you're done, turn the key off. Then start the vehicle back up and see if that perform service light comes back on. If it does, just repeat the procedure. There's times I have to do it 2 or 3 times till I finally get it. Sometimes I depress the pedal slower, sometimes I do it faster. Nonetheless, that's what I need to do it. So just follow the steps and you'll be all right. So there you go, your 67.5 service. 3 basic things I told you need to do: crankcase filter, clean the EGR valve, and clean the EGR cooler. Now, of course, it applies to what vehicle you got. If it's a Ram truck with the factory bed, you're gonna do all 3. If it's cab and chassis, now you're gonna probably be just doing the crankcase filter. But nonetheless, research it in your owner's manual. Check anything you need to as far as service info if you need to call the dealer to find out. That way you make sure you're not overdoing anything you don't need to do. Installation of everything is just opposite of removal. It's nothing special, except when you're wanting to bleed the coolant system, you've got to open up the bleeder, make sure you get all the air out, because you don't want any air trapped in that EGR cooler, because it could cause it to rupture and cause the truck to overheat. So definitely follow the procedure on that. Otherwise, at this point, your perform service message is the next thing you need to reset. After that, you're done. So, at this point, as Frank, and thumbs up on YouTube. Don't forget to like me on Facebook and follow me on Twitter. And if you scroll to the links in the description below the video, you'll be able to find where to go for each one of those. In the meantime, thanks for watching.